Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new Doctor Who review here on this channel. No, it's not the Star Beast, we haven't quite finished that edit yet, but we are here with a brand new episode of Doctor Who, The Giggle, the final part of the 3-episode 60th anniversary celebration. We have a multi-Doctor story here with Unit, returning companions, the Toymaker and more, so there is a lot to talk about as well as all the controversies of the bi-regeneration or bi-generation. It's a very exciting time, and it's a bit of a big episode, especially leading into a brand new era, whilst also trying to respect that whole thing of the 60th anniversary and tie up these 3 episodes with David Tennant and Catherine Tate obviously returning, and this being their last episode for the foreseeable future. So, very, very interesting going forward. So starting with the overview, there was a lot going into this. Now, for those who may not have been aware, good for you, a lot of people were talking about the leaks. There was a lot of leaks about this episode, because there was a leak on Reddit a long time ago that talked about, unfortunately, the bi-regeneration thing, as well as some other details from the Star Beast, some other details from the upcoming Christmas special, which eventually proved to basically this being true. A lot of people took issue with these, and like with a lot of leaks, people assume the worst and don't really wait for it to come on screen before seeing it. Now obviously that's now out there, and that's now up for discussion, but we can't really do a review about this episode without talking about that controversy. A lot of people talking about this going in, and personally my expectations were still high. I was really looking forward to the Toymaker's inclusion. I was really looking forward to obviously seeing more David Tennant and Catherine Tate. That dynamic never gets old. And I was excited to see Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. And honestly, even given the bi-regeneration or bi-generation leaks that went into this episode, I was really excited. I don't really like to look at leaks and sort of run with them as how I imagine it in my head, because I could read something on Reddit and how I'm imagining it isn't exactly how it's going to play out on screen. So I'd rather at the very least reserve my judgment and just try to keep excited, even if I'm not completely sold on the idea. And I wasn't completely sold on the idea of bi-regeneration or bi-generation until the episode, and I watched it, and it's not entirely something I love, but I really do like it. I do have positive feelings about it. Not every part of it works for me, but I think the overall execution in the episode itself was great, and I'm very excited to see where that could lead in the future. But yeah, going in, high expectations, but reasonable expectations. It was a lot riding on it. I'm very used to Doctor Who trying to push a lot of things into a certain episode. Power of the Doctor did that. It had a lot of stuff going on, returning companions, regeneration, old villains, new villains, all that sort of thing being brought together. So I'm used to Doctor Who kind of cramming all that in and some stuff getting missed out. But I think The Giggle was something I was like, well, hopefully with Russell, he knows how to pull this all together. There might be some stuff that doesn't get as much attention as others, but I am excited for it all the same. And did that excitement pay off? Well, let's talk about the plot, first of all. So the plot, we can kind of break down into various different things. First of all, the Toymaker and his games. We'll talk about Neil Patrick Harris as the Toymaker very shortly, but in terms of the games and the ideas of doing that, one thing I always wanted to see if they brought back the Celestial Toymaker or the Toymaker or whatever title you want to give him, I want to see some weird sort of trippy shit. You know, we've got the CGI budget now to do big, grand things, stuff with puppets and that traditional sort of creepy toy vibe, and I think they absolutely nailed that. I think all the stuff in, I mean, it wasn't really the toy room, because that was sort of outside the universe, like a pocket universe kind of thing. It was more just that whole bending of reality with the doors and the hallway and all that sort of thing, and the different rooms and the attic and the puppets, and you know, the giant Neil Patrick Harris with the puppet strings, the puppet show with the previous companions, which we'll talk about in just a bit. I thought that was all excellent, and I was really satisfied with the way they handled the Toymaker and the extent they could kind of go with that character, and also explained away as well why he wants to mess about with humans and Earth. You know, he enjoys that, and I think that was explained really well. There was no part of it where I was like, well, this doesn't feel like the Toymaker, this doesn't feel right. This felt pretty good and accurate to what I was expecting with that, and yeah, it was expected, but it was also surprising and fun, and yeah, I loved it. It's a great concept, the Celestial Toymaker, and I'm really glad that it got the payoff it deserved. And we've also got the world going mad, we've got the reintroduction of Unit again. Obviously we had that in the Star Beast, but not to the same capacity. We saw Unit soldiers, we saw Shirley, a new character who was also in this episode, but this was the return of Kate Stewart. And of course Mel, which we'll talk about in just a bit as well, okay, when we get to characters. But the return of Kate Stewart and a big Unit tower and all that sort of thing, oh, it's such a breath of fresh air. I'm a big fan of Unit. I don't want to see, like, I don't need to see UNIT be there all the time to clear up the Earth's mess, but it has been a part of Doctor Who for so long, and especially New Who as well. So when it was absent throughout the Chibnall era, despite the fact that there were reasons for that, it was really nice to see them return properly in this. Have a big public tower unit written on the side, helipad, big budget. Kate Stewart is right at the top where she belongs. I love characters like this that just span generations and keep coming back. Writers want to use characters like Kate Lethbridge Stewart because they don't change, they don't regenerate, they don't, we bring them in because they are strong actresses. Gemma Redgrave is excellent in this role, and it really breathes life into UNIT, and it makes it feel like a consistent entity, opposed to just having random captains pop up every other story. As easy as that would be to cast and stuff. But yeah. The world going mad was also great. You get a lot of political writing in this story, and I think that's definitely where Russell's strengths lie. We've seen his work with Years and Years, we've seen his work with It's a Sin, and we know that Russell has very strong political opinions that he likes to get across in his work, and there happen to be opinions that I kind of agree with, so it was kind of fun to see Russell poking fun at like the UK government Prime Minister, probably in a caricature of Boris Johnson at that point, basically being, why should I have to care about you? That's just, all fun and games, all tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff. But you also get the everyday man, the sort of geezer that we meet in the first half, I'll call him that, who's sort of like, well, everyone thinks they're right. I pay my tax, I don't drive, but I pay my tax for this road, so I'm allowed to do what I want on it, even if it involves getting himself killed. It's like, everyone thinks they're always right, but not me. I have always been right. It's like, it's brilliant commentary whilst also doing the whole Toymaker messes with everyone thing. It's also great commentary on the society that we live in. And I didn't think it was ham-fisted. I didn't think it was over the top. I think it was pretty bang on, and the dialogue actually worked really well. A lot of shows and films and stuff, it feels very obvious when they sort of hit these beats. But with Russell, there's such a nice blending of that story and, real life issues and all that sort of thing. And I think it blends it really nicely, where you can sort of watch it and you can really get what he's trying to say without it sort of whacking you over the head with it, where it's also funny and enjoyable to watch as well. The conclusion of the story was great as well. One thing I really loved, and it's only a really small moment that I'm not sure many people will even talk about in this episode, but something that really stood out to me, and a criticism I've had of Russell's previous Doctor Who work. I love Russell's previous Doctor Who work, finales included, but there is a habit of doing a whole magic button thing. Something happens in the plot, and then everything's resolved, everyone comes back to life. It happened in Parting of the Ways. Rose Tyler looked into the time vortex and was able to destroy all the Daleks immediately and bring Captain Jack back to life, make him immortal. There were side effects and consequences of those actions, but it was still a very quick resolution. Series 3, you have Martha come back, everyone's thinking the word Doctor, Archangel Network, and the Doctor is restored back to his youth, and they just destroy the paradox machine, everything goes back to normal, and no one remembers anything other than the people in that room. The thing I really appreciated about the Giggle was that it was acknowledged that at the end, after the Toymaker was defeated, when the Doctor, the 14th Doctor I should say, is standing on the edge of the helipad looking across London, and he mentions about how many people must have died. And there's a sort of remorse there and a real moment there to really acknowledge that people have died. A lot of people have died, and they couldn't just click a button and reverse it. And they didn't, and they refused to do that. And I think that's really, really important. And definitely shows, I think, Russell's progression as a writer. I think he is a stronger writer now than he was earlier in his career. And that's not an insult to his previous work. I adore his previous work. I grew up on it, and I will always love that era of Doctor Who. It's probably my favourite era of Doctor Who, because it's so just brilliant to me, and I can look past these little things. But I do think that it shows that Russell has something new to bring here, and is finding better ways of dealing with these things. People can die. The general population of Earth can die and have side effects going forward. We even see the side effects of the flux being brought up again, and I think that's brilliant. So yeah, it was only a small moment with David Tennant, but I thought that really breathed a lot of life into it. We have that whole magic button reversing stuff, that I like to call it anyway, and I think we avoided that this time, and it was really good to have a moment to acknowledge the tragedy that must have happened on Earth. So that's great. And bi-regeneration. Okay, let's talk about bi-regeneration, or bi-generation, or whatever you want to call it. This is the thing, this is a topic that everyone's going to be talking about, so I'm just going to kind of waffle about it. There is no script here, this is just a note. All it says in my notes is bi-regen, and that's it. I'm going to just waffle about it and say how I feel. So the concept going into it is a difficult one. It's very new, it's very refreshing, and obviously there are going to be people who obviously die hard, they don't want to see anything different. I am personally, and I always have been, an enjoyer of change in Doctor Who. When something drastic changes, either with the lore or the direction of the show, I'm always excited by it, because Doctor Who inherently is about change. New things are introduced. Regeneration wasn't a thing until it was. You know, and I think there's a lot of new things here, and I like it when something's explained, and I think that's my only criticism with this, is I didn't feel like there was a reason. There was a little bit of dialogue, which implies from both of the Doctors at one point when they say to the Toymaker then, this is your game, you did this to us, so this is your fault, you have to go along with this. Which kind of implies to me that, okay, so this isn't just by chance the Doctor happens to bioregenerate, it is something to do with the Toymaker, it is the Toymaker's influence, wanting to play games with the Doctor, not letting him regenerate but letting him change face, and because to him that's a fun game but actually ends up being his loss. It's something that isn't 100% in my mind. I don't know if that's what they were going for with it, whether it was supposed to be the Toymaker, but at least in my mind that is an explanation that I quite enjoy. I also don't hate the concept of it. I always love the idea of the next Doctor shaking hands with the current Doctor in the regeneration story. My only sort of thing that I didn't like about it was the way it ends. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with the David Tennant Doctor. And I think going forward that would be an interesting thing to explore. Is this David Tennant version of the Doctor eventually going to turn into Ncuti Gatwa? Is that going to work? And is that the same Doctor then? Or is this David Tennant Doctor going to end up going on a different path and regenerate into different people? Can David Tennant's Doctor here regenerate? Does he age like a normal human? There's a lot of questions I have that I didn't feel that were answered, and that's fine. They don't have to ever be answered. But I would love it if this bi-generation thing came up again in the future and was actually an important plot point. You know, maybe there is a mysterious villain in the future, which actually just happens to be a version of the Doctor. We always talked about the Valiard. I'm not saying it should be that, but maybe something happens to one Doctor and doesn't happen to another. They've shared the life up to that point when they split, and then they go forward. It's implied that Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor is free of all the trauma of the Doctor's life, because 14 has to deal with that. The 14th Doctor retires from the TARDIS and travelling, and just relaxes and does nothing and wants to stay on Earth for a bit. And it's implied either way. He could go off on adventures, he could stay on Earth, he does a little bit of both, but he's going to deal with the trauma and he's going to sort of be happy again. And it was really nice to see that from David Tennant, because his Doctor was plagued with a lot of trauma. So I did basically like seeing that, and I like the idea that the 14th Doctor deals with the trauma and Ncuti Gatwa doesn't have that trauma, so he's going to be a new, fresh, exciting, happy Doctor going forward. And I think that's really great and really refreshing, actually. But the one thing I'm not sure is he like that because they split and David Tennant took all the angst and trauma and Ncuti didn't get any of that? Or is it because David Tennant will eventually become this version of Ncuti, so he has his own way of dealing with the trauma? It's the thing in my head is it's the questions I'm not sure about, but then it's also a new concept, so I don't need 101 answers to every question I have. That's how TV works. You're supposed to be left with some questions, ways, reasons to keep tuning in, keep watching it. There's also the thing about the split TARDIS, all that sort of thing, but from here on in, it's like, I'm just going to accept as it's going forward. I'm going to forget that David Tennant's probably sat on Earth, unless it's an important plot point in the future. Ncuti Gatwa is the next Doctor, and that is the TARDIS, and they're both going travelling, and it just continues as normal. This is a strange, new, weird plot point that is a lot of fun and something I really, really enjoyed. I'm not sure about where it might go in the future, if at all, but I'd be happy if it's just left there. I'll be happy if it gets brought up again. That's my point. I think I'm just left with a lot of questions, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just want answers, naturally. I want to know, what is the crack with this? And then you go to the other thing, in the commentary, Russell T Davies said, and a lot of people have been bringing this up, is that Russell said that, when they bioregenerated, every Doctor bioregenerated at some point, and there's alternate versions of different Doctors, hence Tales from the TARDIS, the little mini-series we got before the 60th anniversary specials, with older, distinguished Doctors showing up and shaking hands with their former companions in one way or another. Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor actually explains, different timelines, and some timelines I regenerate and some timelines I don't. So the thing with that is, a lot of people are going, well, that means every Doctor split, and then that's really confusing and that's really weird. Yeah, it is. And if that's kind of something that goes forward, then fair enough. I don't hate it only in the principle that it's not in the show yet. If Russell introduces this into the show, and brings back an old doctor and has to explain that away, and it works, then great. If it doesn't work, then we'll address that when we come to it. But as it stands, all Russell said in the commentary was that, I think that this is the way, like, this is almost like his headcanon. Yes, he's the showrunner, so his headcanon kind of shows, it has weight, but I think it's in his head. There's a comfort, it's an easy way to bring old actors back as the Doctor to shake hands with the new Doctors, because they can be alternate versions. So as far as I'm concerned, this is the only other Doctor in the universe that's lingering around, but there are different timelines here and there where different Doctors are knocking about, and there's different alternate realities and ideas and all that sort of thing. And again, Russell made a good point of, technically Clara and me are out there in a TARDIS flying away together somewhere. We might never see Clara again in Doctor Who, but technically she's off there in a TARDIS somewhere. We don't see her, we don't need to know what she's up to, we don't need to ever find that out, but she is technically out there in terms of canon, as is David Tennant here. He could be travelling about, he could be going, he might be outlive Donna and her family, and then he might go travelling again, he might go out into the stars. We never have to see David Tennant again. It never has to be something that's brought up. And the same, but you could have these tales from the TARDIS, these little inklings, these little ideas into the Doctor's life, and it's a nice little thing that I don't think you really need to sit on and worry about too much. What's happened is on screen has happened, and you can move forward with that. If it gets brought up in the future, and it's a big concept going forward, then obviously explore that and work out if that's too complicated or too much or too little. But as far as the episode's concerned, what it shows us in the episode, I'm content with. Anything that Russell says in interviews and commentaries, it's still his ideas. He doesn't know, he hasn't got it completely locked down exactly what he wants with it yet. That's fine. That's completely fine. If he introduces it again in the future, in the show, as like a main thing, then we address that when we come to it and see if we like that, don't like that, whatever. But as far as this episode's confirmed, and everything I've heard about the whole bi-generation, split regeneration thing, I love it. And that's all I want to say about it, because Christ, that was a lot of waffling. In terms of characters, let's talk about the 14th Doctor. David Tennant's last outing, probably as the Doctor for a long time, and a brilliant one at that. His performance, again, was absolutely sublime. I love seeing David Tennant as the Doctor, not just from a nostalgic point of view, but David Tennant is a phenomenal actor and performer, and he absolutely embodies this role as the Doctor. The pure joy that we see when he's opposite Ncuti Gatwa as well is just incredible. And yeah, it's a great story, and it's a lot for David Tennant to do, to work against someone like Neil Patrick Harris. It really works. It really gets to show his skills as an actor, and I think he was excellent in this episode. His character has changed, and it was really nice to see the whole acceptance of the regeneration. When he says to Donna, he says, "It's not death, I'm just changing." It's such a radically different view from what the previous version of David Tennant's Doctor had, when he's the 10th Doctor and he's talking to Wilf and he's like, it might not be death, but it feels like dying. It's very depressing, it's very down. But David Tennant, his character has changed here. And obviously it's not the same version of the Doctor, and I think that cements it probably the most. Is his approach to regeneration was, actually, I'm happy to move on. I'm not going to let this linger. I'm happy to move on. So yeah, fascinating and brilliant. And I'm really happy with the way that ends and how his character sort of is off. He is great as the Doctor, and he will always be able to embody that no matter what age he is. I can't believe David Tennant is in his 50s and he's still able to do this just as well as he was doing 10, 20 years ago. We've also got Donna in this episode, her final episode. I think it was a great send-off for Catherine Tate. We get a lot of sort of lead up to where she could be in a few years' time, potentially working for UNIT, but she's happy. She's got her memories back, she's got a good, stable job, and she's got a future. She's got her best friend back forever, and she can just enjoy it and just kind of move forward, and it's just nice and lovely, and she gets a really happy ending here. Now, I don't know if I prefer the miserable ending from Series 4, because dramatically that was probably better and more concluding. I also think Donna didn't have a lot to do in this episode, and I think that's fine, but I just would love Catherine Tate to have done more in this. There was a couple of scenes with the puppets which I thought were great, but as soon as we get back to the modern day and UNIT, she's not contributing too much other than just being there for the Doctor and a few lines here and there, which is great, and that's absolutely fine by me. Again, I was a bit disappointed. I kind of wanted a little bit more of Donna, but then last week we did get quite a lot of Donna and the Doctor, so I feel like we've had more than our fair share and fair portion of Catherine Tate as Donna, and it's a nice send-off for her. It's a really nice alternate send-off to what we had in Series 4. She didn't die. She is probably the happiest she could be. It's probably one of the nicest, most content companion send-offs we've had in the show's recent years, and I'm really happy with that. She deserves it, of all people, and I think that's great. The toy maker, Neil Patrick Harris, is just fantastic. They emphasise a lot of this in the Unleashed, behind-the-scenes show, but Yeah, the man is talented, honestly. Like, he can juggle, he can mix cards, he can dance, he can sing, he's a performer, he's talented with accents. He's just great. He completely embodies the role of the Toymaker, and I can completely picture it. I've seen the original Celestial Toymaker story, and Michael Gough is incredible as well. There's such a demeanour about that, and you get that with Neil Patrick Harris some of the time, and the rest of the time he's having fun with it. He's chewing that beautiful, beautiful, tasty scenery, and opposite David Tennant, he's incredible. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like I'm just waffling, but I just adore his performance in this, and I think it's one of the all-time great performances for Doctor Who villains. You wanted someone who was really going to stand out, and when you bring in someone like the Toymaker, you want it to be a big deal, you want it to be a big, grand performance. And I think it just adds a new level to it. Not to mention him dancing and doing a number to the Spice Girls song, Spice Up Your Life, I think was brilliant. Again, deliciously camp Doctor Who at its absolute finest. You know, we had I Can't Decide in Series 3 with the Master. We had Rasputin only last year with the Master as Rasputin in Power of the Doctor, and then this year we get the Toymaker doing Spice Up Your Life, with some of the best editing and musical number stuff I've seen in Doctor Who. Him dancing with Kate Stewart and Mel and throwing them on the floor and smacking them against the wall, jumping from shot to shot, turning soldiers into bouncy balls, turning bullets into roses. I think it was just really well done, and a really great, almost eerie presentation of the Toymaker's performance and like powers. You know, it was sort of fun and kind of campy and enjoyable and laughable and whatever. It was a great scene, and it was funny. You know, I had a grin on my face the whole time, but there is a sinister element to it. He is murdering people in this scene and having so much fun doing it, and I think that's brilliant. Exactly what Doctor Who needs. I absolutely love it. Unit and Kate Stewart we've kind of already talked about, so I don't really need to go into that too much more. I really enjoyed their inclusion in this story. Again, Kate Stewart being back is always a blessing. It's great to see her alongside, you know, new doctors and all that sort of thing. I think she's excellent, and I'm just gassed that she's sort of lasted this long in the Doctor Who universe. She's one of these characters that could have been very easily moved away from, like Osgood, for example, which is a shame to not see her inclusion in this. But yeah, Kate Stewart is brilliant, and I absolutely love every time she's on screen here doing stuff. It's just pure enjoyment, and she's just great in this role. I know it sounds daft, but like, it doesn't matter who the writer is, she's just great in this role as Kate Stewart, and she really embodies it. And by now, she's really like become like the equivalent of like the Brigadier. You know, give it a few more years, she will basically be at the Brigadier status. She's been in the show since 2012. I think that's incredible. She's over 10 years now. She's been basically in the role of the Brigadier, the scientific head officer of unit, or whatever her official title is. And yeah, Gemma Redgrave's great. Mel returns in this as well. How fantastic was Mel in this? Bonnie Langford returning. Obviously we knew she was going to come back for Ncuti's first series, but it was going to be a supposed surprise that she was going to be in the Giggle, but a lot of people worked it out quite early on. They even had it in the background of some of the promo pics, so it was quite obvious. She was incredible in this. Again, Bonnie Langford was great. The writing was great. I don't hate Ace and Tegan's inclusions in Power of the Doctor, but I feel like this felt a lot more real. You know, even though Mel had some of the strangest endings and beginnings with the Doctor, we never actually saw them meet, and Mel left to sort of live with a space Viking and get married and disappear into the stars, but eventually she came back, and it's great. You know, she's a computer scientist, and she's excellent on that. You know, she's got a lot going for her, and you know, to have her meet with the Doctor again, it felt very heartfelt. The right amount of dialogue was there, the right amount of exposition to where she's been was there. Yeah, you know, it's again, I'm not trying to use everything to dunk on Chibnall's era. Again, as I say in every review, I love that era and I love a lot of what that did, but you look at Power of the Doctor and the way you have Kate employing old companions as members of UNIT and the Doctor meeting them via that. There's a very different interaction we have from them to what we had with Mel, and I felt like the interaction with the 14th Doctor and Mel, for me, meant a lot more than the interaction between the 13th Doctor and Tegan and Ace. Because there was a lot going on in that story, I know, but I think just on simple things, that was cool, but I really love the way they handled this. And the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. Oh, let's talk about it. How great was he? Like, honestly, immediately, I've never been so quickly sold on someone as the Doctor. And I genuinely mean that, you know. When Matt Smith first appeared, when I was like 9 years old, watching Tennant regenerate for the first time, not for the first time, second time, I wasn't sold immediately, you know, as a 9-year-old. I was still very judgmental. I was still very protective of my doctor, the one that I'd grown up with. When Matt Smith changed into Peter Capaldi, I was like, okay, this is good. But I was sort of like, well, I'm not sure where they're going with this. Is it interesting? Jodie Whittaker, again, there wasn't much to go off in Twice Upon a Time, so I was just kind of interested and excited to see where that was going to go. And of course, we know what David Tennant was going to be like, so obviously that's not really fair to count that from the 13th to the 14th. But Ncuti Gatwa, oh my god. You know, for someone who hasn't been in Doctor Who before, who is new to this world, who I've only really seen in Sex Education, for him to come out of David Tennant like that and immediately just embody everything I love about the Doctor, that sort of almost childlike innocence whilst also having that demeanour of someone who has lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Ncuti Gatwa is brilliant already. I absolutely loved it. And I just, for me, the energy and the just... Ncuti has such a natural charisma. Whenever he's talking to people in interviews or whether he's playing the Doctor, he brings a lot of that. And he is very charismatic, naturally. And it shows in his performance of the Doctor. There's not too much yet to go off, but more than we usually get from something in the Regeneration story. So, yeah, very exciting. I loved seeing him. I love seeing him interact with the TARDIS. I love seeing him quickly change over the colours. His interactions with David and Catherine. I'm saying them like their actor names. I don't know why I'm doing that, but I am now. It's an easier way to distinguish rather than saying 14 and 15. Or is it? Who knows? But yeah, I absolutely loved his performance in this, and I thought the 15th Doctor as a character was really interesting, really exciting. I can't wait to see more. I feel a bit early to sort of judge the character, but I'm very excited with what I'm seeing. I knew I would be. Ncuti is a fantastic actor. But it just filled me with such excitement. You know, as a kid growing up watching Doctor Who, you're sort of precious over the Doctors that you see come and go and the Doctors you grow up with. And as you get older, you're not sure whether, am I falling out of love with the show or am I not? You're just never sure about these sort of things. I've never been so immediately sold on someone as the Doctor, just popping up and again, the natural charisma coming through just immediately. I just thought, I watched it, big grin on my face. I was like, that man is the Doctor. And I cannot wait for Christmas to come around so I can see more of him. Talking about the visuals and production, we're not going to witter on too much about this because there's not really too much to say. I just want to sort of point out the CGI in this was incredible. They definitely saved a lot of the CGI budget for this last episode, especially compared to Wild Blue Yonder. Again, absolutely love that episode. Solid 9 out of 10 for me. You can watch my review on the channel if you haven't already. But I really, really thoroughly enjoyed... the one thing I didn't like... I enjoyed the episode, but the one thing I didn't like about it was the big CGI landscapes and all that sort of thing. It felt a little bit rough around the edges, whereas this felt incredible. Knowing that they filmed that entire helipad sequence just in the back lot of the studios with a blue screen, it looks incredible. Like, they've really done a really good job with the cinematography and the way they've composited that background in of London skyline with the colours. Everything feels so rich and colourful and just good looking. Like, the cinematography was excellent, and the CGI really helped elevate that, especially with the Toymaker stuff. You kind of need a bit of CGI enhancement there. And the music was fab. Murray Gold, again, delivered as always. The 15th Doctor's theme aired for the first time in this episode. Obviously, we heard that at the celebration earlier this year. It's on my channel. It's got a lot of views if you haven't already seen it. But it's something that, again, was just great to hear. And I adored that. And then beyond that, I think just little references to old stuff. When we see the companion puppets, you know, we get those themes of those characters. I was trying to work out little things. The clearest one for me was Clara's theme, but they're all in there to an extent. We also had the Unit Rocks theme when they're on the helipad, which is great to hear that tune back. We haven't heard that since like series 4 maybe. We've got the Shepherd's Boy very, very briefly when they're flying over to unit headquarters. We got a reprise kind of Hologram, the 9th Doctor's regeneration music when the 14th Doctor was starting to regenerate. So that was really cool. A lot of great musical Easter eggs. Donna's theme, the Doctor Forever as well. The Doctor Forever transitioning into the 15th Doctor's theme. Yeah, just musically excellent from Murray Gold once again. Not just in the sake of doing nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, but bringing up these themes where appropriate. You know, Unit playing at the right place, the Doctor Forever playing at the right place. These moments felt great, and I just loved listening to them and hearing it. It was just, yeah, super, super exciting, and I just can't get enough of Murray's music. I loved Sega Nakanola, and he would have probably done a fantastic job with this as well. But, you know, hearing those familiar themes in a 60th anniversary feels justified and earned, but he's not doing it in a nostalgic pandering way. He's doing it in a proper, enjoyable, interesting way. Easter eggs. There were a lot of Easter eggs, and we're not going to, again, witter on about these too much because you probably all spotted them. I love the puppet show. The puppet show filled me with so much joy to see, acknowledgement of the Moffat era and the way the Doctor treated the companions. Him going through and being like, Amy Pond, dead. Clara, dead. Bill, dead. The Flux. It's kind of just interesting. I know a lot of people were a bit peeved that Ryan, Graham and Yaz weren't mentioned, but there was a reason for that. I initially thought, people are going to be a bit riled up by that, and I was right to an extent. There were a lot of people who were like, well, you mentioned all the other companions, why not the fam? Because they didn't have that much trauma with the Doctor, I guess. He didn't, or he didn't kill the companions or let the companions die. Amy Pond technically didn't. Okay, yeah, they explain all these things away where, Amy, Bill and Clara technically died in some capacity, but they can never see the Doctor again. Whereas, like, Graham, Dan, Yaz could technically see the Doctor again, and they're still grateful for the adventures. They're not left with trauma, they're not left with some form of death, so it didn't feel appropriate to sort of nod on that. He's trying to make the Doctor feel bad and give the Doctor opportunity to make stupid excuses and point out how silly they sound. With Bill, it's like, well, she's left with the consciousness, and he's like, oh, right then, yeah, fair enough. A great scene, full of that just the right amount of nostalgia, but done in the perfect sort of way. Puppet show, Toy Master, old companions, great stuff. And we talk about the trauma of the Doctor. We mentioned it very briefly, but there's a scene with the 15th Doctor and the 14th Doctor in the TARDIS where they're talking about what next. And he's like, talking about him. He's like, you've not stopped. We've not stopped. And you need to stop right now so I can go off and have adventures. But they reference a lot of different things. Legopolis, Adric, the key to time. They mention a lot of different things. But Sarah Jane and River Song get a name drop. It was amazing to see Sarah Jane's death actually acknowledged in the bloody show. Like, insane to me that Elizabeth Sladen died in 2011. It's never been acknowledged. It's baffling to me. Obviously, it's hard to approach and hard to go after, but why have we not had a moment just to sort of acknowledge how much Elizabeth Sladen brought to the show? And I was really happy with the way they referenced it. A lot of people were sort of a bit like, ooh, it felt a bit like, but it was important and it was proper, and you could tell there was real emotion, especially behind Tennant's eyes, having worked with Elizabeth Sladen. Yeah, it was a really important little moment, especially with the topic of returning companions at the minute. I think it was really nice to see that. And again, River Song getting name dropped, all these other things getting name dropped. I thought it was just really, interesting, and you got your sort of fix of nostalgia whilst it not feeling forced or over the top or whacking you over the head with it. It felt right and it felt proper, and I respect that. I enjoy that. And there are a bunch of other Easter eggs and stuff in there as well, which I'm not going to go through, but basically, again, like, I'm content with the Easter eggs. They had, again, the perfect balance of nostalgia, whilst not letting it overtake the story, Again, I am a fan of Power of the Doctor, but, having all companions, Daleks, Cybermen, the Master, Regeneration, old Doctors, it's just kind of everything to get you to feel these things, but not actually have a substantial, proper story underneath, and I think that was the difference for me, is that, again, we're not prioritising nostalgia for the sake of nostalgia. We're prioritising a story, and nostalgia plays a part in it because it's the 60th anniversary. And also, it's continuity, it's part of the show. And I like that. It doesn't feel like it's trying to get a cheap reaction out of the audience. It feels like it's genuinely making an effort. Anyway, in conclusion, this has been a very long review, but in conclusion, the Giggle is great. It's not without its flaws, and I'm not sure about the way they wrap up the 14th Doctor and Donna. I kind of feel that there's maybe more room to explore there, and I feel that in terms of the drama and the stakes, it probably could have been higher. I would have liked to have heard the Toymaker's influence introduced earlier. Maybe we'd seen something in the Star Beast that would allude to what happens in here. But, I don't think any episode of Doctor Who's perfect, and I'm not someone who's in the position to sit there and go, yeah, this is shit, because it's not. It's excellent, and it's really well handled, and I think they had a lot riding on it, and given my expectations going in, I was worried about how much they had to juggle, no pun intended. And they pulled it off, bringing back the Toymaker, introducing Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, doing the bioregeneration, bringing back an old companion, bringing back Unit, bringing back Kate Stewart, handling all these things, wrapping up the 60th anniversary, wrapping up Tennant and Tate. I just think it was great, and I just feel, looking back at the 3 specials, how lucky are we to get these normal sort of stories that are just so out there and weird, but also feel so quintessentially Doctor Who, with one of the most famous Doctor companion duos, whilst also again setting up a brilliant, exciting future. I think we're so lucky as Doctor Who fans to have this. Everyone, we take it for granted that we've got 3 specials, we might have just got one. We might have got none. We don't know these things, you know. We're very lucky to have this, and I'm so excited that not only have we got 3 specials, but 4 if you include the Christmas special, but 3 really good specials as well. Like, really solid standout specials that, you know, you can argue about lines of dialogue, you can argue about performances, you can argue about CGI all you want. I feel that with these 3 episodes, they've left a much bigger impression on me as a viewer and a fan of Doctor Who than I've had from a lot of episodes in recent years. I think there's been some fantastic standouts in Jodie's era. Most specifically for me in Series 11, I love Demons of the Punjab. I love Rosa. I am a big fan of It Takes You Away as well. I like Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. And some of these episodes make a huge impact on you. But I feel like we've had 3 episodes back to back that I just don't think I'm going to ever forget in a hurry. You know, there's episodes of every era that stand out as exciting and different and wild and weird. And this little mini series of 3 episodes with the, you know, one of the more popular Doctor companion duos, I think has just been a fantastic little treat for the 60th anniversary. Yeah, we didn't have Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi riding the back of a Garm, rocking up on set. But what we did have was David Tennant and Catherine Tate returning as the Doctor and Donna. Something which seemed completely impossible and impractical a year ago, or a couple of years ago. And it was just great to see what they did with that, and it was good. And now I'm sat here as a fan, more excited than I've been probably in years to see new Doctor Who, a new era with Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, Millie Gibson as the companion. There's so much excitement going into this. You know, we're going to get a whole series for the first time in a few years at the beginning of this next year. So yeah, it's really exciting, really, really exciting. I'm so good. I'm buzzing. But that's basically my review. I think again I'm gonna have to, same as Wild Blue Yonder, for very different reasons in this episode. I think I probably preferred Wild Blue Yonder, but I will still give this episode a 9 out of 10. I loved it. I think it's great. Classic quintessential Doctor Who. Just everything that I love to see in that. So yeah, absolutely love it. We will be discussing the Giggle, your guys' opinions on the Giggle, my opinions on the Giggle, any more things I can think about over the next few days. We'll be discussing them on Tuesday night at 7 PM as part of the Who Bulletin, a live stream series I do every Tuesday on my channel. We will be taking a little break for Christmas, but not just yet. We have got this week to do it, and we're going to be on there, going live, talking about Doctor Who, talking about the latest episode, and then also talking about the future. We've got a trailer for the Christmas special, we've got Ncuti's new Sonic Screwdriver, by Tuesday we'll also have the full-length version of the Goblin song released on Spotify, probably hitting Christmas #1 by then. So there'll be a lot to talk about, so do join in, do join us there, and obviously subscribe for more, comment, like, do whatever you want really, but let me know what you thought of the Giggle down below. Yeah, thank you all so much for watching, hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.